She lived in a house that looked calm from the outside. The paint was clean, the gate was always locked, and the windows were never broken. People passing by would never guess what kind of life was hidden inside. To them, it was just another quiet home on a narrow street. But for the girl inside that house, felt like a cage. She had once known warmth. Years ago, when her father was still alive, the house had laughter. Meals were simple, but shared. Even on hard days, her father made sure she felt safe. After her mother died, he tried his best to fill both roles. He worked long hours, came home tired, but never too tired to ask how her day had been. She remembered those moments clearly, even after everything changed. When he remarried, he told her it would be good for both of them. Said she would finally have someone to take care of her when he was away. At first, the new woman acted kind. She smiled often, spoke softly, and told neighbors she loved the girl like her own child. The girl wanted to believe it. She tried hard to please her, hoping life would stay peaceful. But peace did not last. After her father's sudden illness and death, everything shifted. The house felt colder, even during summer. The girl was still young, but she understood one thing very clearly. She was alone now. The woman who had once smiled at her no longer pretended when no one else was around. Her voice became sharp. Her eyes were always watching, searching for mistakes. At first, the cruelty was quiet, small things. Food portions became smaller for the girl and larger for the woman. The girl was told she did not deserve new clothes because she did nothing to earn them. If she asked about school, she was told to stay quiet and clean the house instead. Each day added a new rule, another reason she was never good enough. The girl woke before sunrise every morning. She cleaned the floors, washed dishes, and prepared meals she was not allowed to eat. While other children walked to school with backpacks and friends, she stayed behind, scrubbing stains that never seemed to disappear. When she asked why she could not go to school anymore, the answer was always the same. You are too slow. You are too useless. You should be thankful you even have a roof. Neighbors rarely saw the truth. The woman knew how to perform kindness. When guests visited, the girl was told to smile and stay quiet. She was dressed neatly for those moments, her hair brushed just enough to hide the neglect. The woman would laugh and say the girl was shy, that she preferred staying at home instead of school. People nodded and believed her. The girl learned early that crying only made things worse. Tears brought anger, and anger brought punishment. So she became quiet. She moved softly, spoke little, and tried to become invisible. At night, she lay awake on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, remembering her father's voice. Sometimes she whispered his name, hoping it would give her strength. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. Her body grew, but her spirit shrank. She forgot what it felt like to be hugged. She forgot what it felt like to be asked what she wanted. Her world became very small. The kitchen, the back room, the cold looks, the endless commands. She stopped dreaming because dreams hurt too much. There were moments when help almost came. Once a neighbor noticed how thin she looked and asked if she was eating properly. The woman smiled and said the girl was just a picky eater. Another time a shop owner saw bruises on her arms. The girl froze when asked about them, knowing what would happen if she spoke. She said nothing. Silence became her shield, even though it slowly destroyed her inside. The woman reminded her daily that no one cared. If anyone wanted you, she said, they would have come already. Those words sank deep. The girl started to believe them. She believed she was invisible to the world, unwanted, forgotten. One afternoon, something small but strange happened. The girl was sent to the market to carry heavy bags. It was one of the rare times she was allowed outside alone. As she struggled with the weight, a black car stopped nearby. A man stepped out, well-dressed but calm, not loud or proud. He was older, with tired eyes that had seen many things. He watched her for a moment, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that felt different, like he was actually seeing her. When the bag slipped from her hands and fell to the ground, he walked over and helped her pick it up. He asked if she was all right. His voice was gentle. She nodded quickly, afraid to speak. He noticed her shaking hands, her thin arms, the fear in her eyes. "Is this too heavy for you?" he asked. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to say so many things, but her throat closed up. She only nodded again. He offered to carry the bags to the gate. She hesitated, knowing she would be blamed for talking to strangers. But the bags were heavy, and her strength was gone. She walked beside him in silence. At the gate, the woman appeared almost instantly, as if she had been watching from behind the curtain. Her smile came back, quick and smooth. She thanked the man loudly, calling the girl careless and weak. The girl lowered her head, already preparing herself for what would come later. The man said little, but his eyes moved from the woman to the girl and back again. Something in that short moment did not feel right to him. He nodded politely and left. The girl was dragged inside and scolded for embarrassing the woman. That night she cried silently into her pillow, blaming herself for everything once again. But somewhere down the road, the man in the black car could not forget her face. He was someone used to numbers, deals, and power. People listened when he spoke. Yet what stayed with him was not a business problem or a loss of money. It was the quiet fear in a young girl's eyes. He had seen that look before, long ago, in places where suffering was hidden behind walls. The girl, of course, knew none of this. All she knew was that the house felt heavier than ever. The woman's cruelty grew sharper, as if she feared something without knowing what it was. The girl worked harder, spoke less, and disappeared even more into herself. But that brief meeting had planted something neither of them could see yet, for the first time in years. Someone had looked at the girl and felt uneasy, not because she was weak, but because something was wrong. And sometimes justice begins not with loud words, but with a quiet moment when someone chooses to look closer. She woke up that morning with the sound of rain tapping softly against the thin roof of the small room she had been forced to call her own. The cold seeped through the walls, curling around her like invisible fingers, and she shivered, wrapping herself in the thin blanket that smelled faintly of mildew. Outside, the sky was gray, and the world seemed heavy with a quiet gloom, reflecting the feeling she carried inside her heart. God. She had long learned not to hope for warmth or comfort. Yet a small, stubborn spark of curiosity always nudged her forward. Her stepmother had already left for the day. The sound of the front door closing echoed down the narrow hallway, leaving the house in silence, a silence that never felt peaceful. It was heavy, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were holding back the years of anger, neglect, and cruelty that had festered within. She carefully climbed out of bed and walked to the small, cracked mirror that hung on the wall. Her reflection was pale, her eyes wide and haunted. Yet there was a flicker in them, a quiet determination that had begun to grow over time. She had learned to survive, to hide, to endure. But she had also begun to notice cracks in the world around her. Small openings where kindness and hope might still enter. Breakfast was usually a hurried, joyless affair. But today she paused a little longer than usual. She sat at the chipped wooden table, staring at the bowl of porridge that had been left for her. It was lukewarm, tasteless, but she ate it anyway, because hunger was sharper than disdain. The house creaked and groaned around her as though it resented her presence. Each room she passed reminded her of the countless times she had been told she didn't belong, that she was a burden, a mistake. Her stepmother's words had been sharp, cutting through her confidence, shaping her into someone who feared attention. Someone who moved quietly through the world so as not to be noticed. Yet even in that fear, she had begun to notice small things. A neighbor's smile when she passed by the street, a gentle word from the mailman, the soft meow of the neighbor's cat that always rubbed against her legs. These small sparks of connection gave her a secret strength, and she clung to them as if they were lifelines. She had begun keeping a small journal, writing down what she noticed, what she dreamed, what she imagined her life could be if she were free from the constant shadow of cruelty. That day, after cleaning the small room as best she could, she was sent outside to fetch water from the well at the far end of the property. The path was muddy from the rain, and her bare feet sank slightly with each step. The water in the bucket would be used sparingly, and she had to carry it back slowly, balancing the heavy container without spilling a drop. The effort made her muscles ache, yet she did not complain. She had learned that complaints were often met with sharp words, punishment, or worse. As she walked, she noticed the garden her stepmother had planted. It was overgrown, neglected in many places, yet a few stubborn flowers still bloomed, pushing through the mud and weeds. She paused to touch one of the petals, marveling at its resilience. Somehow, even in neglect, life found a way to thrive. She smiled faintly, a small gesture that felt daring in a house where smiles were rare. Carrying the water back, she thought about the few moments of kindness she had experienced recently. The neighbor had slipped her a small piece of bread last week, saying quietly, "I know it's hard at home. Eat this." She remembered the warmth of that gesture, the way it made her feel human again, even if just for a few minutes. She realized that there were people in the world who were capable of goodness. People who could see her not as a burden but as someone deserving of care. That thought gave her courage, a small but growing courage that she had to hide, for showing it openly might draw her stepmother's wrath. By mid-morning, she had returned to her chores, which were endless. Laundry, sweeping, scrubbing the floors, cleaning dishes, tending to the animals that were fed more out of obligation than affection. Her stepmother appeared intermittently, offering commands and criticisms in equal measure. Her stepmother's cruelty was not always loud. Often it was quiet, subtle, designed to wear her down, to make her doubt her worth. A wrong glance, a cold tone, an eye roll, they were all weapons. And she had learned to survive them. Yet she began noticing patterns in her stepmother's behavior. She saw that the stepmother feared exposure. She noticed the hidden letters, the hurried conversations that stopped when she entered the room, the way visitors were always carefully managed to avoid seeing her in a state of discomfort. Slowly, quietly, she began observing, making mental notes, thinking perhaps one day she could find a way to show the truth, to reveal the cruelty that had been hidden for so long. Around midday, she ventured to the attic, a place she rarely visited. It was filled with dust, cobwebs, and forgotten items, yet she felt drawn to it. There, hidden among the old trunks and broken furniture, she discovered a small box of letters and photographs. Curiosity overcame fear, and she began examining them carefully. The letters revealed fragments of the family's past, secrets she had never known, and glimpses of the person her stepmother had once been. The photographs captured moments of joy, moments of life before cruelty had settled into the house like a shadow. Handling the letters and photographs, she felt a strange mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness for the lost innocence, for the life she had been denied, and hope for the possibility that someone out there could see her truth. She hid the box carefully before her stepmother returned, but in that attic, a seed had been planted. The seed of realization that her suffering was not her fault, that the cruelty had a source, and that perhaps one day it could be confronted. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a dull shade of orange and purple, she found herself on the small porch, staring out into the distance. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and fresh. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a quiet moment of dreaming. She imagined a life where she was free, where kindness was not a stranger, where her voice could be heard without fear. She imagined justice, a world where cruelty could be exposed and goodness could triumph. Her stepmother entered without warning, her shadow falling over the porch. "What are you doing out here?" she demanded, her tone sharp, her eyes scanning for signs of disobedience. She froze, but something inside her refused to shrink. "Just looking at the sky," she said softly, her voice steady, despite the fear curling in her stomach. Her stepmother sneered. "Don't get used to dreaming. Dreams are for those who can afford them." She left without another word, slamming the door behind her. And yet, the girl did not feel crushed. The small spark of determination inside her had grown. She realized that her dreams were hers alone, untouchable by cruelty, and that she could nurture them quietly, patiently, until the time came when they could be made real. As night fell, she lay in her small bed, listening to the wind through the cracks in the walls, the distant sound of animals in the yard, and the faint rhythm of her own heartbeat. She thought about the letters, the photographs, the glimpses of life she had uncovered, and the neighbor's small acts of kindness. She realized that the world was not entirely dark, that even in the deepest shadows, light could be found. And somewhere in that realization, a plan began to form, fragile and uncertain, but filled with the promise of change. That night, she whispered to herself, as if speaking to a friend she had never met. One day, someone will see the truth. One day, justice will come. Though she did not know who that someone would be, she felt a flicker of hope, a feeling so rare and precious that she clutched it close, guarding it as fiercely as she had learned to guard herself. The rain returned in the early hours, tapping gently against the roof, and she drifted into a sleep filled with dreams of freedom, of kindness, of a life that could be hers if only she had the courage to reach for it. In that sleep, she did not feel small or powerless. She felt the first stirrings of strength, the quiet promise that one day, the shadow that had haunted her for so long could be lifted, and that the world outside, with all its unknown possibilities, might finally see her as she truly was. The next morning, she woke with a feeling she could not name. It was not fear, and it was not hope exactly it. It was something in between. A restless curiosity that made her linger in bed longer than usual. The house was quiet, unusually so, and she sensed that the day would bring something different. She dressed quickly in the worn clothes that had long been her uniform. Tucking the small journal she kept under her pillow, a secret companion in her lonely world. Her stepmother had already gone, leaving the house eerily still. For the first time, she ventured into the main hall without fear. She noticed the dust on the furniture, the way the light fell through the windows, and the faint smell of neglect that lingered in every corner. She moved slowly, as if exploring a place she had always been too afraid to see. It was strange to feel the space around her differently, to see it not just as a prison, but as a place that had secrets, clues, and a story of its own. She remembered the letters she had found in the attic. They had revealed fragments of her stepmother's life and the hidden tensions within the household. They also hinted at something more, a connection to people she had never met. People who might notice the injustices she had suffered. She felt a spark of daring and decided that today she would explore more quietly, carefully. Seeking pieces of her life that had been kept from her, she started with the back rooms of the house, places she had avoided because of the stepmother's sharp warnings. The rooms were cluttered, filled with old furniture, broken appliances, and boxes of items that seemed forgotten. As she searched, she discovered small treasures, a tin of coins, letters addressed to someone who was not her, photographs of people whose faces seemed kind and familiar. Each discovery added layers to her understanding of the world, beyond her stepmother's cruelty. While examining a drawer, she found an old key. It was small, tarnished, and unassuming, but something about it made her heart race. She wondered what it opened. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps it was something dangerous. But the thought of finding out filled her with a daring she had rarely experienced. She slipped the key into her pocket, careful to hide it, and continued her search with renewed energy. Later, when she went outside to tend to the garden, she noticed a man across the street watching the house. He was dressed in simple clothes, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and kind. She froze for a moment, unsure if she should wave or hide. The man smiled slightly and nodded, as if he recognized her from somewhere, or as if he understood something she did not. Her heart thumped in her chest. She had rarely seen anyone in the neighborhood who gave her more than a passing glance. And yet this stranger seemed different. Days passed, and she found herself noticing him more. He did not intrude. He did not ask questions. He simply watched, sometimes smiling, sometimes thoughtful, and sometimes disappearing entirely, only to reappear at another moment. She began leaving small signs for him, folded pieces of paper with tiny drawings. A flower left at the edge of the garden, a note in the mailbox. She did not know why, but she felt that he might be someone who could help her, someone who could see her situation without judgment. Meanwhile, her stepmother's temper grew more unpredictable. The cruelty that had been quiet and controlled became erratic, small bursts of anger aimed at the girl's smallest mistakes. She learned to duck and dodge these moments, to hide in corners, to pretend to be invisible. But inside, her resolve strengthened. She began imagining ways to resist, ways to protect herself, ways to create a life where she could be free. One afternoon, she discovered a hidden passage behind the pantry wall. It was narrow, dark and dusty, but it led to a small room that had clearly been used by someone before her. In it, she found old diaries, carefully hidden photographs, and letters that told stories of hardship, resilience, and hope. She realized that her stepmother had kept secrets not just from her, but from the entire world. The room became a sanctuary for her, a place to think, to dream, to plan. In the evenings, she would sit there with a candle, reading the diaries and letters. They told stories of people who had endured cruelty, who had found ways to survive, and sometimes even to triumph. She felt a connection with them, as if their courage was flowing into her, giving her strength she had never known. Each story inspired her. Each letter reminded her that she was not alone, that others had faced darkness and emerged stronger. One rainy evening, she found a letter that made her heart skip a beat. It was addressed to her, though it had been written years before she even lived in the house. The words were kind, protective, and filled with concern for a child who had been forgotten by those meant to care for her. She did not understand everything, but she felt the sincerity and warmth behind the words. For the first time, she realized that someone had thought of her, had wanted to protect her, had believed she deserved better. The stranger across the street, whom she had started calling the Watcher in her mind, finally approached her one evening. She had left a small flower at the edge of the garden, as she always did, and he knelt to pick it up. His voice was soft, cautious. "I've noticed you," he said simply. "I think you might need help. You don't have to face everything alone." She froze, unsure whether to trust him. Her stepmother had always taught her that strangers could not be trusted, that help was a trap. But there was something in the man's eyes, a quiet honesty, that made her heart beat faster. She nodded slightly, the first sign of trust she had offered in years. "I don't know how to ask for help," she whispered. "That's okay," he said gently. "You don't have to say anything yet. Just know that someone is watching, someone who cares." From that day on, she began meeting him in secret, always careful to avoid her stepmother's notice. They spoke in whispers, in small gestures, sharing pieces of her story and listening to his. He told her about people who had helped others in situations like hers, about ways to expose cruelty and seek justice. He was careful, patient, and never rushed her. Slowly, she began to believe that change was possible, that she could imagine a life where she was safe, where her voice could be heard, where her suffering could end. Her stepmother remained oblivious. Or perhaps she had grown complacent, assuming the girl was too frightened to do anything. This misjudgment became her advantage. She realized that careful observation, quiet patience, and strategic thinking could give her opportunities she had never known before. She began planning small acts of defiance, citing the hidden room, leaving notes for her mysterious helper, documenting the stepmother's cruelty in secret. One evening, she discovered another hidden box in the attic, this one filled with receipts, documents, and records that her stepmother had carefully kept. Some of the papers suggested the stepmother had been dishonest in business dealings, had lied about finances, and had manipulated people to maintain control. She realized that these papers could be powerful if she could find the right person to see them, someone who could act on the truth without putting her in danger, as weeks turned into months. She became more confident in her secret activities. The hidden room, the letters, the diary, and the documents became tools in her quiet rebellion. She was learning to think ahead, to anticipate her stepmother's moods, and to navigate the house with skill and caution. Every day her courage grew, and with it, the belief that justice might not be a dream after all. One evening, as she carefully returned a set of papers to the hidden room, she heard her stepmother's voice calling her name. Her heart raced. She hid behind a stack of boxes, holding her breath. The stepmother entered, her expression sharp, scanning the room. "I know you've been snooping," she said, almost casually. "I can feel it." "Don't think I don't notice?" The girl's heart pounded, but she did not move. Instead, she focused on controlling her fear, on remaining silent, on protecting the secrets that could one day set her free. Her stepmother's eyes narrowed, suspicion flaring, but she left the room without another word. The girl exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. Each day, She was learning not just to survive, but to fight quietly, cleverly, and with purpose. That night, she met the man again. "I think it's time," he said softly. "I think we are ready to take the first step. But you must be brave. You must trust that justice can come." She nodded, feeling the weight of the journey ahead. Fear still lingered, but it was tempered by determination. She had survived years of cruelty, hidden from the world, endured the sharpness of words and neglect, and yet she had emerged stronger in ways even she could not have imagined. She understood now that patience, observation, and courage could change everything. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the rain and the wind, she allowed herself a quiet smile. The first steps toward justice were being taken. The first pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. And somewhere deep inside, she felt a hope she had never felt before, a hope that her story would not end in darkness, that the cruelty she had endured would not define her, and that one day, someone powerful enough to make a difference would see the truth and act. For the first time in years, she fell asleep with a sense of purpose. The shadow that had haunted her for so long had not disappeared, but it no longer controlled her. She had allies, she had plans, and she had a growing belief in justice. And in the quiet of the night, she whispered to herself once more, "One day the truth will come out. One day, someone will help me." And this time, she truly believed it could happen. Days passed quietly at first, but there was a tension in the air that she could feel in her bones. She continued her secret activities with the man who had become her ally, carefully documenting the stepmother's cruelty, gathering evidence from the hidden room and keeping meticulous notes in her journal. Each note was a thread. She began to see a pattern forming a map that could one day reveal the full extent of the injustice. She had suffered, her stepmother had grown increasingly suspicious. She moved through the house with sharper eyes, a colder tone, a restless energy that hinted she sensed the girl's quiet rebellion. Despite this, the girl remained calm in her exterior, hiding her small victories behind a mask of obedience. She had learned the art of patience. Every step, every gesture, every careful movement brought her closer to a day when the truth would be revealed. Then came the day that changed everything. A black car rolled slowly down the street, stopping in front of the house. She saw it from the window and froze. Inside, a man in a crisp suit stepped out, moving with an air of authority and quiet power. Her heart thumped. She recognized him immediately, not as a stranger, but as someone who had been mentioned in the letters and documents she had uncovered. He was a billionaire, someone with influence and the ability to bring real justice. Her ally gestured to her to stay calm. "This is him," he whispered. "The person who can make a difference." The stepmother appeared behind her, sharp and suspicious. She noticed the visitor immediately and moved to greet him with forced politeness. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice smooth but wary. The billionaire did not answer directly. Instead, he observed the house, the surroundings, and the stepmother with a quiet intensity that made the girl's stomach twist. He had the presence of someone used to being listened to, someone whose decisions could not be ignored. The girl realized instantly that this was her chance, the moment she had been preparing for. The opportunity for the shadow that had haunted her life to be lifted. Her ally led her to a back room, away from the stepmother's sight. "Stay calm," he said. "When the time comes, speak the truth. You have nothing to fear from him. He wants to see justice done." The billionaire entered the house, his gaze sweeping across the rooms with precision. He asked questions, simple but pointed, about the household, the management of the property, and the people living there. He did not act with anger or suspicion. He acted with quiet authority, making it clear that he was listening, watching, and understanding everything. The stepmother tried to control the narrative, speaking carefully, hiding her lies behind practiced words. But the billionaire was not easily deceived. He asked for documents, for records, for evidence of the household's management. Each time, he compared her statements with the papers, the letters, and the photographs the girl had uncovered. Slowly, quietly, the cracks in the stepmother's story began to show. Finally, it was the girl's turn. She stepped forward, her heart pounding, her voice trembling but clear. She told him everything: the cruelty, the neglect, the fear she had lived with, and the ways her stepmother had tried to hide the truth from the world. She spoke of the hidden rooms, the letters, the documents, and the photographs. Every word carried the weight of years of suffering, but also the resilience that had kept her alive. The billionaire listened, silent, absorbing every detail. There was no judgment, no disbelief, only attention and understanding. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "I see," he said softly. "Thank you for speaking the truth. You were brave to do this." Stepmother's face paled. She had been confident in her control, in her ability to manipulate, but the presence of someone powerful enough to see through her lies had changed the game entirely. She tried to argue, tried to twist the story, but the billionaire's calm demeanor made her realize that words alone could not protect her anymore. He examined the documents, comparing them to the letters and photographs the girl had gathered. Slowly, a clear picture emerged, the evidence of years of cruelty, neglect, and hidden manipulation. The billionaire's expression remained calm, but there was an unmistakable edge of determination. Justice, he understood, required action. He was prepared to act. Over the next few hours, he coordinated quietly and efficiently, speaking to officials and arranging for investigations. The girl stayed close, her heart a mixture of fear and relief. She had imagined this moment for so long, had dreamed of someone powerful, seeing the truth and acting, and now it was happening. Her stepmother tried to maintain composure, but the tension was visible. Her hands trembled slightly, and her voice lost the sharp edge it had always carried. She realized that her control over the girl was slipping, that the years of hidden cruelty could no longer shield her from the consequences. The billionaire took careful steps to ensure the girl's safety. He made it clear that she would be protected, that she would have a place where she could live free from fear. For the first time, she felt a deep sense of relief, a feeling she had rarely known. The world outside the house, which had always seemed distant and threatening, now seemed full of possibility. As the investigation proceeded, neighbors and others connected to the household were interviewed. Slowly, the truth began to surface. People who had been silent for fear or neglect began speaking out, confirming the girl's story. The stepmother's lies could no longer hold, and her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The girl watched the process with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Every day brought new developments, people acknowledging the injustices, authorities taking action, the stepmother becoming increasingly isolated, and throughout it all, the billionaire remained a steady presence, guiding the process with quiet authority, ensuring that justice would be done without further harm to her. Then came the day of confrontation. The billionaire summoned the stepmother to the living room, where the girl and her ally were present. He spoke clearly, detailing the findings, the evidence, and the consequences of her actions. The stepmother attempted to argue, to deny, but the facts were undeniable. The photographs, the letters, the documents all pointed to the truth. She had tried so hard to hide. The stepmother's expression shifted from anger to fear to disbelief. She realized that her power was gone, that the years of cruelty could no longer protect her. The girl, for the first time, felt a sense of empowerment she had never known. She had survived, she had endured, and now, with the help of someone powerful and just, she was seeing the beginning of real consequences for the cruelty she had suffered. After the confrontation, the billionaire spoke to her privately. "You were brave," he said. "You could have stayed silent, but you chose to speak. That courage is what will change your life." She felt a lump in her throat, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. For so long, she had believed that no one could help, that no one could see the truth. But here was someone who not only saw it, but had the power to act. She realized that her life could finally change, that the years of fear and neglect did not have to define her future. The stepmother was removed from the household under legal supervision, and measures were taken to ensure she could not harm the girl again. For the first time, the girl experienced life without constant fear. Without the need to hide, without the shadow of cruelty looming over her, she began exploring the house, touching the rooms that had once been spaces of despair, and imagining them as places of safety and comfort. The billionaire helped her access resources, including a place to live, education, and support for the emotional scars she carried. He encouraged her to pursue her dreams, to cultivate her talents, and to trust that she deserved kindness and opportunity. Slowly, she began to understand that the world outside her old home could be different, that people could be good, and that justice could be real. Her ally remained close, a reassuring presence, reminding her that she did not have to navigate this new life alone. Together, they explored the letters, photographs, and documents she had collected, piecing together a fuller understanding of her past. This process was both painful and healing, allowing her to confront the truth while also acknowledging her resilience and courage. The girl began to make new connections in the community, people who recognized her strength and determination. She realized that her story, once hidden in the shadows of her stepmother's cruelty, could inspire others and show that even in the darkest circumstances, courage and truth could prevail. As months passed, the house that had once been a prison became a place of transformation. The rooms were cleaned, repaired, and filled with light. The garden bloomed again, tended with care and attention. And in the midst of this change, she discovered something remarkable: the quiet, steady growth of her own confidence, the realization that she had the power to shape her future, and the understanding that kindness and justice could indeed exist in the world. That evening, as she sat in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange and pink, she whispered quietly, almost to herself, "I am free now. I can live, I can dream, I can be happy." And for the first time in her life, she truly believed it. The days after her stepmother's removal were unlike anything she had ever experienced. For the first time in years, she woke without a sense of dread pressing on her chest. The house that had once been a place of fear and shadow now felt like a space that could hold hope. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating corners that had once been dark and oppressive. Every room seemed to breathe with a new life, and she felt as if she could finally breathe along with it. Her ally and the billionaire continued to support her, offering guidance, encouragement, and friendship. They helped her establish a routine that was not dictated by fear, but by her own choices. She began attending classes, learning things she had never had the opportunity to explore. Numbers, letters, history, and stories from around the world opened her mind in ways she had never imagined. Every lesson, every conversation, strengthened her confidence and sense of self-worth. The garden outside, once neglected and muddy, now flourished under her care. She spent hours tending to the flowers, planting new seeds, and watching the colors emerge. Each bloom felt like a small victory, a reminder that life could thrive even after neglect and hardship. She often paused to breathe in the fresh air, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Realizing that such simple pleasures had been denied to her for so long, one morning, as she tended the garden, the billionaire joined her. He watched silently for a moment before speaking. "You've done well," he said softly. "Not just with the garden, but with yourself. You've endured more than most people can imagine, and yet here you are, growing stronger every day." She smiled, a real, unguarded smile. "It's strange," she admitted, "to feel safe after so long. To imagine a future where I'm not afraid." "That feeling will grow," he said. "And so will your life. You've earned the right to dream, to live, to be happy. Don't let anyone ever take that from you again." With his guidance, she began to reach out to the world beyond the house. She contacted people who had helped in the investigation, reconnecting with neighbors and community members who had once been afraid to intervene. She shared parts of her story carefully, focusing on the resilience and hope she had found, rather than the fear she had endured. Each conversation strengthened her voice, making her realize that her experiences, painful as they were, could inspire others to stand up against cruelty and injustice. One afternoon, while exploring the attic, the place that had once been a hidden sanctuary of secrets, she found a small collection of letters that had been overlooked. They were from distant relatives and old friends of her family, expressing concern for a child who had been living under difficult circumstances. Reading them, she felt a mixture of sadness and warmth. Sadness for the years that had passed without their presence, but warmth in knowing that she had been cared for in ways she had not fully understood. She began carefully organizing all the letters, photographs, and documents she had collected over the years. Each piece became part of a larger story not just of suffering, but of survival, courage, and ultimately justice. She realized that her life could now be a testament to resilience, that her experiences could help others recognize and resist cruelty in their own lives. Her stepmother, meanwhile, faced the consequences of her actions. Legal proceedings ensured that she could no longer manipulate or harm anyone under her care. The girl learned that justice did not always come quickly, but when it did, it could be powerful and enduring. Seeing her stepmother held accountable gave her a profound sense of closure, a realization that the fear that had dominated her life could finally be replaced with safety and freedom. As months turned into seasons, she began to rebuild her life with a sense of purpose. She enrolled in courses that interested her, learning skills that would allow her to pursue a career in independence. The billionaire and her allies supported her endeavors, but they never controlled her decisions. She learned to trust her own judgment, to make choices based on her desires and values rather than fear. The community around her began to recognize the change as well. Neighbors who had once looked away now spoke to her with respect and kindness. Children played in the garden she had nurtured, and adults approached her for guidance and advice. She felt a sense of belonging she had never known, a realization that even after years of isolation, she could connect with others in meaningful ways. One day, she was invited to speak at a local community meeting about resilience and courage. Standing before a room of people, sharing her story for the first time publicly, she felt a mixture of nervousness and pride. She spoke of the fear she had endured, the cruelty she had faced, and the quiet acts of bravery that had kept her alive. She spoke of the importance of speaking out, of seeking help, and of believing in the possibility of justice. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, and then applause filled the space. People came forward to thank her, to share their own experiences, and to express admiration for her courage. She realized that her story had power, that her experiences could transform pain into hope, that she could use her past to help others find their voice. In her personal life, she began to form close friendships that were based on trust, respect, and kindness. She learned to share her thoughts and feelings openly, discovering that she could connect with others without fear of judgment or harm. The garden, the house, and the community became symbols of her journey. From fear and neglect to empowerment and freedom, the billionaire remained a mentor and friend. Never overbearing, always supportive. He encouraged her to pursue her dreams, to explore new opportunities, and to continue advocating for justice in her community. She realized that his presence had been more than just an intervention. It had been a catalyst for growth, a reminder that someone with power could use it to uplift rather than control. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset, she reflected on the years that had passed. The fear, the loneliness, and the pain were still memories, but they no longer defined her. She had survived, she had grown, and she had found a path to a life filled with hope, purpose, and safety. She understood now that even in the darkest times, courage, patience, and determination could lead to change. She also realized the importance of giving back. Inspired by the support she had received, she began volunteering to help other children and young people who were facing neglect or cruelty. She used her experiences to guide them, offering empathy, advice, and practical support. She discovered that helping others was not just a duty, but a source of joy, a way to transform her past into something positive and meaningful. The house that had once been a symbol of fear became a place of learning, laughter, and community. She invited neighbors, friends, and children to visit, sharing stories, teaching skills, and nurturing growth. The garden flourished under her care, becoming a symbol of resilience and hope. Every flower that bloomed, every seed that sprouted, reminded her of the life she had reclaimed and the power she had to shape her own destiny as the seasons changed. She noticed the subtle ways in which she had transformed. Her posture was more confident, her voice steady and assured, and her eyes reflected a quiet strength. She no longer flinched at sharp words or sudden movements. Instead, she faced the world with courage, prepared to protect herself and others if necessary. She had learned that fear could be managed, that cruelty could be confronted, and that hope could grow even in the harshest conditions. One day, while organizing her documents and letters, she discovered the small key she had found in the hidden drawer years before. Holding it in her hand, she smiled, remembering the moment she had discovered it and the curiosity that had driven her to explore the hidden spaces of her life. The key had once symbolized mystery and potential danger, but now it represented discovery, courage, and the power to unlock new possibilities. Her future stretched out before her, filled with promise and opportunity. She knew there would be challenges, moments of doubt, and difficulties to navigate, but she also knew that she had the strength, wisdom, and support to face them. The years of cruelty had not broken her. They had shaped her into someone resilient, compassionate, and determined to make a difference. The billionaire visited occasionally, checking on her progress, offering advice, and celebrating her achievements. Each visit reinforced her belief that justice and kindness could coexist, that those with power could use it to protect rather than dominate. His presence reminded her that the world was not entirely cruel, that allies could be found, and that courage could inspire change in time. She began to dream not just of survival but of thriving. She imagined a life filled with meaningful work, loving relationships, and the opportunity to help others. She pictured a home that was warm, welcoming, and safe, a stark contrast to the house that had once been a prison. Every decision she made, every step she took, was guided by the knowledge that she deserved this life, that her past did not define her, and that she had the power to create her own story. And so, years after the shadow of her stepmother's cruelty had first fallen over her, she stood in a place of light, surrounded by people who cared, a home she had made her own, and a future full of possibility. She had endured, she had resisted, and she had triumphed. The memories of fear remained, but they were now part of a story of courage, hope, and justice, a story that she could tell proudly. Knowing that she had the strength to face whatever came next, as she walked through the garden one evening, feeling the soft grass under her feet and the warm sun on her face, she whispered quietly, almost as if speaking to the past version of herself, "You made it. You are safe. You are free. And this is only the beginning." The wind carried the words softly, as if the world itself was acknowledging her journey. The girl who had once hidden in shadows, afraid and alone, had become a young woman filled with courage, purpose, and hope. And in that moment, she knew that her story, though born of hardship, was one of triumph, a true testament to the power of resilience, justice, and the human spirit.